Thank you, everybody. I'll start with a claim. So I will claim that developer experience and AI-driven development are the two key initiatives for the future of software development. And allow me to explain. So currently we are in a place where we try to kind of push both from different directions. So we have the AI-driven development helping us with the development, and then the developer experience, platform engineering pushing from the operations side. And now we've gotten to a point where a dear colleague of mine, Jan, who might be here or might not be here, he said that why do we use AI-driven development to write code to tell stupid computers what they should be doing? And we already know that where we are at the point with AI-driven development is it's indeed helping us write code for itself or stupid computers. And we already know that this is due to change in the future. So what AI-driven development will push us to do, it will automate beyond our current imagination. And I see that in the same way, platform engineering, developer experience will do from the other direction. So allow me to demonstrate. Let's see. So I always say, when doing any live sessions or live coding or whatever, I fail alone. But today, we can succeed together. So let's see what's going to happen. So I've created an application template. It was like this weekend was super grim. It was like rainy, this slushy, you know, Finland. I had my morning coffee. I hadn't been coding for a while, and I was like, I'm going to be on stage on Tuesday. I'm going to code something. So I made a React application template to kind of show what platform engineering could be and how AI-driven development helps there. So the code itself is like relatively simple. I've only used AI to generate any of it, and I'd love to walk you through more code live, whatever, just to show what happens. Is, good. The code that I already had appeared again. No. And then I borrowed from TV2. So last spring in TDoc London, we were on stage with Emma, and we were talking about the TV2's platform engineering, and they've made a CLI. And I'll come back to this later. But I also wrote a CLI. It's called TDoc CLI. And what it does, it's my platform engineering. So let's create a project. Let's call it Copenhagen TDoc. I'm using the template React application template. Almost there. And then I'm going to use a domain. So when the new domains were released, I realized that there is one particular domain that interests me and is still free, and it's of course TDoc. Hopefully works. And let's try. So I don't know what's going to happen. So it creates a repository based on the template. It clones it. And then it creates a project in Vercel. And those who haven't used Vercel, I encourage you to, because if you have been doing developer platforms or similar, in your companies, Vercel is kind of showing the way where you should be going with it. So it created Copenhagen TDoc here. And let's open the link. Oh no, deployment not found. And this is for me, of course, this is the worst moment, because currently we're in the moment where only I can fail. But let's refresh. I have a page. So using platform engineering, starting from a template, releasing an application to domain TDoc that hopefully that works. Now you get your cameras out, you scan the QR code or go to tdoc.hopefully.works, and we'll see if it actually works or not. Oh, amazing, amazing. So I myself was voting with the QR code. You can already see I was trying to think which side it should be so that where it would end up. Okay, so here we see. When coming into this session, of course, I primed it with AI, and you're currently voting, and way more than I thought, by the way, and you can see the votes pouring in already. All simple code. If you go to GitHub Marko React application template, you'll find it there. This is literally less than 50 lines of code. And yet, there it is. Good. So for those who don't know, developer experience is an overall experience developers have about their work. And today we've been talking lots about developer experience, but there is one particular thing that I want to say out loud because I'm taking the company's perspective here. It's the productivity. So you saw already, I spent 2 hours coding an application on Saturday morning with a cup of coffee. I made a template out of it. Any one of you can do what I just did in the same amount of time that I just did. So productivity. And of course, there's lots of other things in the satisfaction and engagement, and especially Dan and Emma were talking about how the platform engineering helps developers. But always, when we're going to the future, think of it more as a fundamental change in how we actually create software. Coding will be Sudoku. It will be something that we'll be enjoying doing in the future as well. But both of these directions will be pushing it into smaller and smaller role in the organization. Good. Now into the topic of my talk. So I'm going to go through 3 failures of organizations of today. So when they start doing things like these, why do they fail? And the first failure is implementing AI-driven development did not yield the results that we expected. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I was on this very stage and I said, AI co-piloting will help developers be 55% faster. And to be honest, on Saturday, when I was coding the application for your enjoyment here, I did spend only like 2-3 hours to make it, which means that I really did spend more than, save more than 80% of my time. But it was my individual time. I was working on it alone. We see that organizations who have R&D usually spend at most 10% of their resources into coding. And if you go and make it 55% faster, you'll be max 5% faster as an organization. And usually it's even less than that. If we go and look at the organizations further, we already know that the managers have defined these AI-driven development and developer efficiency as their top priorities, and yet they don't even know what that means, let alone that they would be able to measure it in the organization. Like, I have nothing against surveys, but when we go and look at the productivity, survey is not the only way that we can do it. Rather, I say survey does not show those kinds of results alone. It will show the satisfaction, it will show the engagement, it will give some signs of productivity. But in all honesty, you have to put in place more metrics than that. And yet, with everything that we here talk about developer platforms, organizations haven't actually implemented them very well, which means that we still see the regular developers spending most of their time with the tooling that they use. And one interesting fact which I want to raise out is 55% of the code merged into main lines or the main code has vulnerabilities that are found only then. And now if we take some learnings from some of our customers in the manufacturing and automotive, these are kind of like combined results. I want to bring 3 out. When you have your co-piloting expectations at 55%, you make a survey and you ask, was it 55% improvement? Everybody will say no. But what we found is that most of the people working with AI-driven development will say that, yes, it saved me 3 to 4 hours per week, which is 10%. And 10% already for any organization is a huge improvement. So implementing AI-driven development is it's something that's very natural to do if you can expect 3 to 4 hours per week. It's very significant. Second thing that we've noticed is that the developers end up writing more compliant and consistent code. So if you plug in, let's say, tools like Snyk or Black Duck or the GitLab security tooling, you will quickly notice that when you use AI-driven development, AI assistants are today already trained on models that help you create more consistent code. So the code is better, it's less complex, it avoids some of the security problems that you would introduce yourself, and it's kind of a metric that you didn't think of at the time when you just brought Copilot in. It's something that's come as a natural surprise on the background. And a third thing I want to raise is that, of course, when we talk about the platform engineering and AI-driven development, reducing the need for coding and maintaining tooling and tinkering, it will be, for traditional organizations, a big shock. And especially in continental Europe, organizations will need to have approvals from the worker unions to be able to use these kinds of tools in the future. So we've already identified that we're on the brink of a big change, and the old structures don't necessarily support that as well. Good. Next failure. We're unable to scale new technologies and initiatives across the whole organization. And the organizations who try to put, for example, developer platform in place, or the organizations that have just said that here's your selected AI-driven tooling, go ahead and use it, they quite soon notice that part of the organization did, part of the organization didn't. One of the big reasons for this is, thank you, Stefan, Dan, for the slide, by the way, is that the development decentralizes. So developers aren't put into functional categories or functional teams. They are in cross-functional teams. They have to work with multiple components, multiple different parts of the application infrastructure you have in your organization. It's becoming more decentralized, and the developers have more, as we've said, cognitive load, and they have to be able to understand more kind of connections around to be able to create features. While at the same time, we see that the tool chains are centralizing. So instead of the teams running their own tool chains, the trend is trying to bring the tool chains back together. We've now 15 years in DevOps, and there are literally hundreds of tools that the bigger the organization, the more tooling they have, and the direction is getting to centralized. Yet somewhere along the way, it kind of stops. And if I pick an example from Daimler Truck, in 2001, Mercedes-Benz and Daimler Truck decided to part ways. They become two different stock-listed organizations. And Daimler Truck was told that you can use the Mercedes-Benz tool chains for 3 years, and then you're on your own. So what they had to do was that they had to build their own tool chains, their own tooling environments based on what they had, but because they started afresh, they realized that they can actually do two things: bring all of these like Jiras and GitLabs and GitHubs and different tools that they had scattered around the organization into one place, and provide it from that one place only. And they were able to kind of push back the legacy tooling and start introducing the ways, as we heard, for example, from the VLOOKS presentation, the kind of tooling where you are future-proof. And what happened was they really did reduce their application landscape by 40%. So what they were able to do is scale the tool chain into the organization because they had to. Most organizations don't had to, they don't have the feeling of urgency. They don't have the feeling of must, which means that it easily lands short. Then a third one. There's always a new tool to fix the problem, but our people aren't using the ones we've already introduced. And this is something that I often see, for example, when creating tools like the platform engineering, CLI, or you have a backstage running somewhere, you want to use that kind of an environment for all of your organization, but people don't move there easily. So let's take a look at something you've surely all seen before, the technology adoption curve, following from the innovators, early adopters, all the way to late majority and laggards. And in talks like these, like the one I'm having here currently, and the ones that you will listen today, you will see that most organizations focus on the easy part of implementation, the easy part of the innovation curve, the adoption curve. You'll see that when you go to the innovators and early adopters with the CLIs that you've created, you say that we have these Kubernetes clusters here, you can just start using them earlier with Helm and now with Backstage or some other tool. They will be like, this will help my day so much. And you can focus on developer happiness. You go to them, you ask them what kind of tooling they would like, you create that tooling for them, they start using it, and you have a happy group of people within the organization. However, it's a known fact, it's a minority in that organization. The problem comes from the late majority and the laggards. And there, the way how you start doing the change is similarly as what Daimler did as well. So you build functionalities within your automation, let's call it platform engineering or developer platform, and you make sure that you focus on productivity, so you make it easier for the developers to use that tooling, you make them faster by using that tooling, and you add a certain level of control. And it doesn't mean controlling these people. It means the same way as we used to have continuous integration, which started from a basic build. You did a build for your team, for your developers. And when you started adding new tools into the continuous integration, it was already pushed into the automation stream that you had. Like if you added security or linting or unit testing, it became a natural part of the stream that your people were already on. And today, the challenge is, how do you change the parts of the organization that are reluctant to change? And there are two ways. The other way is that you put in place the control, and the other way is that you force yourself, you force the whole organization to change. We've been talking about the developer platform, and I'm going to take a small stab at it myself as well. This is also a very natural place to push all of your new innovations, and we've been talking about the AI-driven agents, for example, today, and you'll probably hear some more about those as well. Developer platform is a natural place, similar to the traditional continuous integration loop, to abstract it out and provide it to your developers as a service. So you kind of find a way to have the control and the productivity, and then you provide these tools as a service, essentially. But once again, the same way as developer happiness, for organizations, it starts from the efficiency, because then the efficiency drives also the budgets and investments into changing the organization. This is also thanks to our dearest Aarhus team, past and present. So when we look at how organizations today, even while you would call it a developer platform, how the former the way we thought of DevOps was like The teams are decentralizing, you have your infrastructure, you have all of the complexity there, and then you say, you build it, you run it. The same, essentially similar way as I just did. You build it, you run it, but then it's on your responsibility. And the abstraction that has been built with developer platform on top of that is something I want to also, as said, I want to give you a picture, slightly different kind of a picture of what developer platform should be as of today. So you've heard of, hopefully, team topologies. If you haven't, then find out. The point is you have one part of the team topologies is to have a platform team which is providing services to developers and considering developers as customers. Then you have the developer teams, and instead of just having the you build it, you run it, you build a platform where you have the reusable components. So you already saw my React application template, which is something that, as said, it's public. You can go and pick it up, and some people want to have it as so-called inner source. You have them as reusable components. Design system from IKEA's presentation, if you were there, is a super good example. The tooling, so AI-driven tooling, all of the automation, all of the infrastructure automation, you would provide through this kind of a platform. But then the other part, which is as important as all of these like reusable tools, is building the knowledge base and building the service management in such a way that you, at all the time you aim into implementing a system like this easier for the organization than what's the alternatives. I had to include a screenshot from TV2. I asked for permission, although this can also be found live on the internet. And here's the TV2 here in Denmark, their kind of platform engineering CLI. And this is how it looks. It's very much similar to the one that I showed you. I just used all of these cloud services to make my life easier. But in serious organizations, of course, you would have the same context, but you would build it into your own domain. And you could have, like, I can deduce that there's Kubernetes and probably some Terraform here and there, and then Helm charts in play, but the concept is same. It's made for the developers from the developer's point of view, making their life easier. Good. So, as a summary of my talk today, we now know that AI-driven development, the platform engineering, developer experience, are making developers' life much easier. It's changing the way we're working as digital organizations. The change is happening. It's, of course, everybody's own responsibility if they jump on board or don't. But there are 4 things I want to share to you. The first one is, usually the benefits might be somewhere else than you thought. As I said, if you only send surveys, if you only look at DORA metrics, if you only go to Copilot API and see how many pull requests were done compared to the previous ones, you're probably not seeing the big picture. What actually is brought with these kinds of concepts of tooling. The second key thing is to make these ways of working more easier to use than the alternatives. And as said, like continuous integration is a super good example, because once continuous integration is implemented, you never want to go back into manual building. The same kind of a way of working applies here as well, whether it's AI-driven development or platform engineering or providing infrastructure automation. And then the third one is, when we have the technology adoption curve, the innovators are easy. The bigger the organization, the more people you have there that have already solved these problems for themselves. And making it centralized only serves that group of people unless you go and make the big change within the organization. And of course, it's easier said than done. But the way to do it is by balancing the autonomy and standardization. So making sure that the people on right can work in the ways that they feel most comfortable. They already know what they're doing. And then bringing the same platform with a mild push by control to the majority of the organization. And there, the last one is, if you're not making it mandatory for the organization, you have to find a way to make it mandatory. This change will not, the same way as agility, this change will not happen by itself. Maybe last thing to say about the innovators in the organization. So if you build the AI-driven development, the platform engineering within the organization in such a way that you're never surprised, then you've done something wrong. Thank you.